Well, welcome to episode 15. I've always said that the Golden Globe race, it's a huge multi-year project which has got so many streams to it. Sailing is just one part of it. In fact, most of the work goes on outside of the race, or at least before the race. And what I want to focus on in this episode is passage planning. I've got 6 weeks to go before I head off to the UK from Melbourne. And I'm travelling east across the bottom of the Pacific, the Southern Ocean, under Cape Horn, up the Atlantic and into Falmouth. I'm leaving in mid-December here from Melbourne, and I'll be arriving in the UK by the end of July 2017. I've got a few stops on the way up the east coast of South America, but all of that I can just say like that, but things don't quite just happen that way, and it requires a fair bit of planning. What I'm going to walk through is just some of the planning that I'm going through, some of the passage planning I'm going through that is helping me just think through what it is I need to do and be prepared for. Just before I do that, of course someone else has already done that, and Knox Johnson in his book A World of My Own covers his passage, if you like, his journey. And I have a bit of a habit each, a few times a week, it's not every morning, I get up and I have a look at whatever the relevant chart is for where he was back in 1968, 69. And today is October the 29th. And on October the 29th, 1968, he was somewhere between Adelaide and Bass Strait. His book doesn't actually put that clearly, but he's somewhere in there, and he actually went through Bass Strait. The Golden Globe race won't do that. We tuck up into Don's hometown, Hobart, for a bit of a check with everyone that we're still there. So I'm just going to work through a couple of the tools that I'm using to plan my passage from Melbourne through to the UK. So I'm using a couple of resources, three dominant resources for the planning of my passage to the UK. One of them is this Cornell's Ocean Atlas, which is been around for a number of years, and it's basically giving you an idea, giving me an idea of both weather and also sea conditions across the oceans that I'll be crossing for the months that I'll be doing that. So this is quite a detailed book which covers the ocean by ocean, month by month. And here we've got in this page here, this is the South Pacific for the month of December. And without going into all the details, you can see in this latitude here, which is between 40 and 50 south, there are dominant wind positions that are indicated in these compass roses, if you like, and it's dominantly northwest, west and southwest winds. And also the green arrows, you might not be able to pick those up, they give you a sense of what currents are around in the area. And there's a map for each month for literally each ocean. So from a high level planning viewpoint, it's good just to get a sense of what the dominant wind patterns are. Not that life ever turns out exactly how it's planned, but the probability is that these are the sorts of winds, the dominant winds that I would encounter in these parts of this ocean at that time of the year. The second source of information that I'm using is a book titled Admiralty Ocean Passages for the World. It's a grand title, and the cost of the book's a grand sum as well. But this is the summation of observations of ocean and weather conditions literally over hundreds of years, which is collected by, they call themselves the Admiralty, but it's the UK Hydrographic Office that collects these. And there's what this book does is, again, for each ocean, it gives the passages that have been most frequently used, literally over hundreds of years, with the data that's been collected by skippers and sailors over a long period of time. And it's got, some quite interesting diagrams and pictures in here. This one, for example, is the World Climate Chart for January, the month of January. And what that does is give a sense of dominant, if you like, wind meteorological patterns that are around the globe, and also dominant wind patterns associated with those. Together with down here, this is the average limit of ice fields, together with temperatures, if you like, that are prevalent in different parts of the ocean. And so that's just a high level picture of the planet, if you like, during the month of January. It also gives on these couple of pages here what can be expected in terms of wave heights. And again, I won't go through this in detail, but just through literally hundreds of years of observations, it's indicating the percent frequency of wave height at 6 metres, and then again the percentage of frequency of wave height at 3.5 metres. The red is the 6 metre wave height, and you can see this down here in the Southern Ocean for something like 15% of the time. You can experience wave heights down here of at least 6 metres. And so it's also got some very detailed instructions about latitudes and longitudes for crossing parts of the ocean and taking advantage of both current and dominant wind patterns. So with only something like 6 weeks to go, I now have a fair idea of the passage that I'm intending to take to the UK. And by that, I mean, it's what I'm going to do is to leave Melbourne and go underneath New Zealand and stay around 40 to 45 degrees latitude south until I get closer to the bottom part of South America, where I need to head to get south to get under Cape Horn. That's at about 56 degrees south. For those not familiar with the latitudes, Melbourne, if you like, is at 38 degrees south. So I'll be travelling a bit lower than Melbourne for most of the trip across the Southern Ocean, and then dipping down underneath Cape Horn at 56 degrees south, and then up the east coast of South America. My intention is to have a first stop at the Falklands, and from the Falklands to stop at Uruguay, and then a couple of stops along the east coast of Brazil into the Caribbean, where I'll spend some time through the sort of second quarter of next year. Up the east coast of the US, there's a race that leaves Rhode Island in July of next year. Some of the other Golden Globe race entrants participating in that race as well, and that'll take me across to the UK by the end of July. To help me get across to the UK, I'll be using a weather router. It's a contract service. He's based out of Perth in Western Australia, and through my sail mail, because I still will have email on board on the way to the UK, I'll be able to get regular updates from my weather router. Bruce is his name, which will hopefully keep me clear of extreme weather conditions and give me a bit of a sense of what's coming, what will be chasing me from west to east. So it's great to have an idea of where I'm going, and I just say, look, I'm going to the Falklands and then Uruguay and then up through Brazil. It doesn't quite happen that simply, though. Countries don't appreciate you just turning up in your boat. And again, part of that passage planning is to do some research on what the immigration requirements are, and also just what the anchoring and marine facilities are that are available in places that I go to. Eisenhower had this great quote that said, plans are generally useless, but planning is indispensable, and I certainly find that with all my passage planning for trips that I've done.